Good evening and welcome to tonight's webcast, Selling on LinkedIn. I'm Dean Seddon, CEO, founder of Maverrik, and I want to share some thoughts with you about how you get more business from LinkedIn without doing all of that stuff that makes your skin crawl. So as you're joining us, there's a chat feature on the broadcast here. Somebody will be moderating the chat for you. So if you've got any questions, throw them in. If we don't get to them or if we don't answer your questions in tonight's webcast, please do email us hi@maverrik.co.uk and we will answer your questions. I'll also, at the end of tonight's session, make an offer, Maverrik team, so that you know, if you want to talk this through with somebody after tonight's session and go, how does this apply to me? You can have a free call with one of our team who'll help you understand this a little bit better and how you can implement it for yourself. Okay, so tonight's session, you are going to need a notebook. I'm going to go through a lot of stuff in a short space of time because we've got to do this in a time constraints. There will be the option to have the free strategy session at the end, and I'll try and answer as many questions that come in the chat. Do let us know in the chat where you're joining from. It's nice to know that people are here because I'm staring down a camera and due to a glitch, I can't see the chat questions, so they have to get fed to me. So I can't see you, but please let us know you're here. I'm hoping somebody's going to nod at me or something so that I can see that people are here, they got in okay and joined us. If you want a replay of tonight, I feel like, you know, like when you do a fire drill or something, when you start something, but if you want a replay of tonight's session, just email us hi@maverrik.co.uk again. And any of the resources I mentioned tonight, I'm going to mention quite a few different resources. If you want a copy of those, feel free to bob us an email and we'll get it to you. It'll be tomorrow. By the time we finish this, it'll be probably 8 p.m. in the UK, around there or thereabouts. So we'll email it you tomorrow. Okay, so let's kickstart. Tonight's session is selling on LinkedIn, generating inquiries without pushy tactics. And I just want to walk through a process that will help you. One of the things about LinkedIn and one of the things about selling through a digital channel that people really get in a tailspin about is it's not about the technology. It's not about whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook or email. We get so obsessed with the tools and the tactics that we miss the science of selling. And I'm not saying you need to go and get a degree here, but there's some fundamentals that no tool and no tactic can fix. In fact, you can use the tactic, you can use the tactical tools, you can use the this thing, that thing or the other, but it won't get you a result unless you've got your science of selling in order. So what do I mean by that? I'm going to walk through it tonight and explain a few things to you. Hopefully some light bulbs go on and some of you will go, Dean, Maverrik, can you help me more? And we've got some courses, paid courses and programs where we help you implement this. And maybe I think we'll do a play out of one of those so you can see what that's all about a bit later. So Maverrik, who are we? Maverrik, we founded in 2014, training, consulting and coaching businesses, and we help businesses implement strategies and tactics that will grow their revenue, margin and profit. Over 1,000 businesses each week we help online, and in total about 250,000 businesses have been through some of our training, whether that be online or in person. It seems a long time ago since I did in person. It feels such a strange thing to say. And our business mission is to help 1 million businesses grow their margin, revenue and profit, or revenue, margin and profit. So that's us. My LinkedIn bio is going to pop up on screen. If you want to find me on LinkedIn and ask me any questions after tonight's session, you're more than welcome to send me a connection request or follow me and say, hey Dean, you were talking about this. Can I pick your brains about it? Any of that stuff is absolutely fine. So what is your goal on LinkedIn? This is my first question to you. What is your goal on LinkedIn? Now, you might have a goal of building your brand and getting your name out there. You might have a goal of building relationships and with current accounts and current clients. You might have a goal of actually getting new clients. Either way, you are trying to sell a message. You're trying to sell who you are, what you're about, and why that matters to people. So if you're not quite selling as in getting new business, the principles of what I'm going to talk about tonight will still apply if you're just trying to nurture existing relationships, or if you're trying to just get your name out there and you're not looking to eagerly sell. If you're a salesperson watching this, this will help you hit your numbers. But it will only help you hit your numbers if you really consistently apply it. If you have a dabble and then don't bother, it's not going to work. Likewise, if you're a business owner and you're not wanting to go too pushy, this will work for you, but you will have to build a process and it will take time. Whether you're, and I'll just use this as an example, if you take selling on LinkedIn, so I'm trying to get business and meetings with clients from LinkedIn, or I'm trying to do it by phone and cold call. There is a time commitment to both. If you have to spend 5 hours calling to get 4 decent meetings, there's 5 hours work for 4 meetings. If you go on LinkedIn, one of the benefits of what you can do is you can get your 4 meetings probably in less time, but actually you can nurture and build a pipeline too. Now, we won't have time to go into all of this tonight, but I'll give you as much as I can in the time. So your goal on LinkedIn, unless your e-commerce, is to get people to come on a meeting. So let's just unpack, and I'm not teaching you to suck eggs here. What is the key thing that has to happen for a prospect to agree to go on a meeting? They don't just go, oh, I've got 15 minutes and I'm bored. That's the worst kind of meeting you can get. Somebody who's got nothing better to do and decides to come on a meeting. That can be the most unproductive exercise of your life trying to sell. What we want is a prospect that sees that we might have an answer for them and is curious to know more. Make a note of that. A prospect that sees we might have an answer to something that they're dealing with, or we have something that helps them and they can't quite see it, but they're curious. That's it. That's all we have to do. So the goal is to get a meeting with a prospect to explore in more detail what we do and how it can help. That's it. But the prospect has to be curious. And one of the things I see far too often across LinkedIn is people blasting information, hoping that that information will convince people to have a call. Statistically, by the way, the longer your message is on LinkedIn, the less likely you will end up in a call. I know that sounds really strange, but the more information you give people, the less likely they're going to want to go on a call. So it's almost a Goldilocks scenario. You don't want somebody who has no interest and no need, and you don't want somebody who's sorry, let me start again. You want somebody who has a need and is curious. And so you don't want to blast too much information because they'll no longer be curious. And you don't want to blast too little because they go, I'm not sure what this is about. It's a bit vague, a bit weird. So there is a sweet spot of curiosity that you have to use for your advantage to get a prospect curious. And so what I'm going to talk about tonight is some of the bad practice, of course, but some of the practice that, if implemented, can be very, very successful. So I want to ask you, are you priming or pitching your prospects? Are you priming or pitching your prospects? Well, what's the difference? Well, pitching is generally cold. I'm going to tell you what we can do. I'm going to give you some information and hope that this information convinces you that you need to talk to us. Priming is about helping your prospect see through their own eyes without you blasting or telling them that you have something valuable and something valuable to them. It warms the prospect and builds a relationship. And it reduces the burn and increases the response. So if you look at this slide here and look at the examples I put on screen, you'll see some of the examples I'm putting up are classic sales pitches on LinkedIn. Very few people respond to them. And I want to quote a stat here because we've done some research, we've done some polls on LinkedIn and asked people, and we got a sample size of about 1,500 people. And I asked them, how responsive or how open are you to being pitched or getting a sales message on LinkedIn? How open are you? And 72% of people, 72% said they'd be open or willing to listen to a sales pitch. 72%. Now, I don't need to tell you that 72% of people are open to a cold message, a cold outreach. 72%. That even with your own experience, and it might be extensive or limited, that if 72% are open, I don't know of anybody who's seeing any kind of decent response that runs in parallel with that 72%. In other words, if 72% are open to it, why are people getting such poor results from cold outreach? Now, some people say, I don't get poor results. And it depends how we define poor results. If you send 1,000 messages, and this is an industry stat, if you send 1,000 messages, yeah, this is off somebody else's website, their own stats. And I'm not picking on them because this is a universal stat. It's pretty much the same wherever you go. 1,000 prospects, if you engage 1,000 prospects in terms of pitching, connecting, pitching, all that kind of stuff, about 4 of them become a customer. 4. 1,000 to get 4. So it's a less than 1% success rate. It's 0.4%, but let's say it's 1%. You might think that actually those 4 customers netted me £100,000 in sales, so it's all right. I'll live with that. But how many of those people blocked you, removed your connection request, or reported you? In other words, how many people did you pee off in the process? And in most scenarios, email, LinkedIn messaging, whichever you choose, you pee off more people than you sell to. And so you think about that and you go, I'm willing to pay that price. But what happens is month on month, you have to go through that process of finding 4 people from 1,000 and eliminating probably more than that, more than the 4 every month. Now, for some people, they go, actually, I'm selling a £500 thing and my market size is, I've got 100,000 people I can sell to. So if I do 1,000 a month, that will last me 100 months. Sounds genius. But actually what happens is your pool of people gets progressively smaller and smaller and smaller until you run out of people. In other words, this process looks for the low-hanging fruit, extracts them, and then you have to find more low-hanging fruit. Ultimately, at some point, you have to develop a strategy that converts at a better rate to be successful, to build a pipeline, to build a sustainable sales channel. You have to build something that doesn't burn more than it gets. Yeah? If you did that in any other industry, they'd say you were mad. But for some reason in sales and marketing, we accept these metrics. And I would challenge you not to. There must be, and this is Elon Musk, if you follow SpaceX and what he did with there, he said there's got to be, the conventional wisdom was that you can't get a rocket into space for less than X hundreds of millions. And he looked and unpicked it and went, there's got to be a way. If the cost of a rocket, the cost of the components of the rocket is 2% of the overall cost of launching it into space, there's got to be a way to do it. And so first principles is that if 72% of people are open to a message, but only 4 out of 1,000 actually buy something because of it, there's something wrong with what we're doing. There's something wrong with the process. Irrelevance, irrelevant targeting, bad messages, whatever it is, there's something wrong between that 1,000 and that 4 that means we get 4. So pitching and straight pitching, some people justify it and saying, I just want to cut to the chase, I don't want to waste people's time. But actually, when you look at it, it's not about the prospect, it's about their time. I don't want to commit to a lead. I don't want to commit to a relationship in fear that it doesn't convert. So I'm not going to commit any time to it, because if I do that and it doesn't work, or I don't turn the deal, it says something about me. It's actually not about efficiency for the customer or the prospect, it's efficiency for us. And I would argue that an efficient sales process is not about how much time it takes for the salesperson, it's the result or the ROI of the time of the salesperson. So if you're cold calling to get 4 sales and it achieves 4 sales, you spend 5 hours cold calling to get 4 sales, that's great. And if that's 4 sales are worth £100,000, awesome. But you also have to ask the question of, well, what could we have done differently to get 8 sales? And is there a better way to use that time and effort to achieve 8 sales rather than 4? So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a principle of pitching, because it's so broad, it's so quick, it's so easy. Actually, the results speak for themselves. You get a result, but the impact or the results you lose or miss out on because you didn't invest the time. So pitching is about churning, getting the numbers, and actually it's a numbers game, and it is a numbers game. So if you're pitching on LinkedIn, one thing is certain: you will need to grow your connections by more than the weekly limit. Now, I'm not going to go into how you do that, because there's pretty much 2 ways. One way will get you in a lot of trouble with LinkedIn, and the other way is effective, but I'll talk about that for another time. But you will need more than the weekly limit, because pitching means you can only connect to, the connection limit is 100 connections per week. And so how do I get my pitches out and convert them if now I can only send 100 connections a week? Because at 0.4%, that means it's going to take 10 weeks for me to get 4 sales. 10 weeks. So already LinkedIn is changing the game to force you to think more about, if I've got 100, how do I make those 100 turn into sales? If I've now got to achieve more with less, what's the process to achieve more with less? And this is where the onus is back on us as business owners and sales professionals to sharpen our tools, sharpen our strategy, and sharpen our tactics. Because what we used to be able to do, and I'll tell you straight, 3 years ago, you could send a template message to loads of people. First of all, LinkedIn wouldn't pick up on it, but they do now. And if you're sending template messages and you send them too frequently, LinkedIn will spot it and tell the users that you're sending it to it's spam. So you could do that 3 years ago and it would work. Now we're a bit more sophisticated, we're a bit more further down the line, and people can spot this, people can see it. And so you have to be a bit more smart in what you're doing. So we need to, if we're going to build sustainably through LinkedIn, we've now got 100 to play with. And some of the loopholes to get around that, they will close. So playing to the loopholes is great, but when they close, you're back to square one again. I've got to use my 100 connections per week, assuming you get a decent connection rate of more than 50%, that's 50 new connections. What am I going to do with them to actually build a relationship, get them to see the need for our product, and get them into a conversation where they want to talk and find out more. So we have to have a sharper game. So one of the reasons why people do the pitching is because there are customers at various different stages of the journey. Some of you have seen this diagram before in our content workshops, but in this one, I want to share it as this. For every customer that you onboard, for every sale you close, there has to be a need. The customer has to need something that you have to offer or your product can deliver. So I didn't say want, because wants and needs are different. Want is a desire. Need has pressure. A need has some pressure to act. Now, what most people are doing with their pitching is, if you look at this diagram, at any given time, there's only about 3% of the market that are actively looking for your product or service right now. In other words, we need Dean's Accelerator, or we need your SEO service, or we need your copywriting service, or we need your cybersecurity software. At any given time, just 3% are actively seeking a solution for their need right now. The rest of the market are at various stages of discovering their need and trying to realize how they fix that, how they solve their need, how they fill that gap. And so they're at various different stages. So pitching works on the premise that what you need to do is convince people, find the needle in the haystack, find the 3% of people who are looking right now. And so if you follow that to its nth degree, what happens is you create a work pattern, a process that is just looking for the needle in the haystack. Whereas people who are successful on LinkedIn are playing both games. They're using content and strategic engagement to actually nurture prospects at scale, whilst they close business and get meetings one-on-one. Nurture at scale and one-on-one to get meetings. What many people are doing is the other way around. They are trying to get meetings at scale and nurture one-on-one, and it doesn't work so well because it's unsustainable, both from a pipeline point of view and from a timescale point of view, and so it buckles. Now, I'm not going to go into this in too much detail tonight because we haven't got a lot of time, but I'd highly encourage you to go and look at one of our Content That Converts webcasts. We have another one coming up, I think, but we have some that you can look at on our YouTube channel, or you can email us and we'll send you the recording of it, because that will help you understand this process in more detail. Some of you are struggling to get results because you're trying to find the needle in the haystack, and some of you are struggling to get the results because you're not developing the opportunities down here. You just keep looking and fishing in here and here, and this is about luck. To be honest with you, fishing for the needle in the haystack is luck, because how do you find the person ready to buy right now without going asking, are you ready to buy right now? And actually look at the messages that you get. Most of the people and the messages you're putting out there are, do you need this? When some of your customers don't know they need you yet, and your job is to show them through content how you can help them fix a problem in their business, how your product fixes particular problems, how your service or solution can aid their business and their objectives. That's what you're trying to do. So if you're priming, you don't need to worry about the weekly limit, because you'll be connecting with the right people, because you'll be nurturing and developing at scale, whilst you're finding the ones who you can help and add value to. So what is priming? Real simple. Consistently leveraging organic content to get your message and brand in front of prospects. Dead simple. Instead of all these posts about look how amazing we are, you focus on all the things that are important to the client. You start talking in the client's language from the client's perspective, and you start to really understand and deeply leverage through content the pain points of your customers. What are the big challenges that your customers have? Get them out in content consistently every day. Now, some people will say at this point, oh, saying similar stuff every day. You say it in a different way each day, you take a different spin on it. But one of the things that people do is go, oh, I don't need to share more stuff. I don't need to share more stuff. Why should I share more stuff? And the reason they say that is because they're sick of seeing their own content. Let me just give you a burst the balloon or whatever, a revelation. You will be sick of seeing the same messages, but your prospects won't see it the way you do, and so they may see a couple of things every now and then, but you're nurturing and persistently keeping that message out there. It's exactly like how you'd market, how you'd run an election campaign. You'd put your message out consistently and it would sink and absorb into people's minds, and then people will associate you with the message you're trying to share. So the key message you want to get across to people is, if you have a client in this sector with this challenge, you are the experts in solving that. Your client is not the expert in solving that problem. They solve it once or twice in their business. You will be solving it every day for your customers. So you need to really use your content to show people that you understand their challenges and you have a solution to them. Show people that through content. Whilst you're building a plan and engaging with people and growing your network and building those relationships one-to-one to move them to a conversation and a call. So quick content tip here. There's five types of content, or 5 elements of content that you should be looking at. Teaching and educate. Can you give people light bulb moments? Actionable advice. What can they take away and do with your content, what you've put out? Are you showing people how you solve their pains and their challenges? Are you showing people how your product can make the difference to the issues that they're working with and the goals they want to achieve? Testimonials and examples. Are there stories you can share that helps other people see, oh, I understand how that makes a difference? Don't assume that your customer will approach your content, your product objectively. It's not going to happen. They are going to approach your product with their perspective, with their lenses. They're going to look at it from their world to yours. So they're going to look from their reality, where they are right now, with their challenges, their issues, and look at what you're saying and see, how does that relate to me? So when you're saying your product is next-gen technology, blockchain this, da-da-da-da-da, does that make, 1, any sense to the customer? And 2, is it obvious the difference that's going to make in their business? Because the danger, particularly in technology and gadgetry, is that you sell the cool things that actually appeal to your competitors. You sell the really cool stuff that the manufacturer or the product designer told you that you got excited about, but actually you got excited because you love the tech. The customer loves your product because of what it does for their business, the challenges and problems it fixes. Before you go onto LinkedIn and go nuts with it, these are fundamentals you should settle. Without you settling these, you will not be able to convey your value. And whilst you'll be sat there going nuts, connecting with people and messaging people, your success rate will be low for as long as you don't get these fundamentals. So testimonials and examples are critical. Then we come to the tricky one, which is actually a bit of personality. People are not going to engage with your company page. They're going to engage with you. So you are the face and the ambassador and the representative of your company. And so it's all about how you build relationships and people getting to know you. So let some of your personality out in terms of how you put your content. avoid all the dodgy issues, divisive issues, all of that stuff, but showcase a bit of you and your personality, what's important to you. Don't become like a mindless robot that just shares company information. Actually show a bit of your personality. How do you feel about the way things work? How do you feel about what's going on in the news? But stay away from divisive issues. Social content is designed to be grabbed hold of. It's bite size. It's not about big, long, informative pieces. It's about, can I get a bit of information out that people can grab onto, they can digest in maybe 30, 40, 50 seconds. It soaks in and they move on. It might take 7 to 15 times for people to see you to really get who you are, get your name and get what you do. 7 to 15 times. So some of you might be connecting with people, sending a pitch to them, and then suddenly you go, they have no idea who I am. Why would they even associate? For me, it's perfectly normal. I'm just connecting. But for them, it's like, who is this person? Anyway, so social content, getting it out there, is a way to educate people in advance of you talking to them, in advance of you building a relationship, in advance. And you show up in their feed, they see you, they get familiar with your face, they get familiar with your name, they get familiar with your company and what you talk about. And so it's a way to warm your audience to you and prime them, as we would say, so they understand a bit about you, so it's not completely cold when you start to talk to them. Priming is also about engaging and breaking down the barriers, removing the friction between you and the prospect. So if we think priming through content is awareness and knowledge and building that credibility and belief in your product and who you are and your credibility, and helping them see the need. Priming the prospect is where you're reducing the friction, reducing the barriers, taking the coldness out of it to actually build those relationships. So what does that mean? It means that in reality, we worked this out and we looked at it. It takes about 4 interactions with a prospect on LinkedIn for them to actually remember who you are and be more responsive to you. 4 to 5 is probably, and sometimes we say 6 to 7. And we've wrote a process based on how many times it takes to interact, and I'll show you that in a minute. So be strategic in what you're doing. Engage the person. The more you engage the person, the more barriers you reduce. The more you interact with that prospect without pitching, the more friction you take out of the process. The more objections you remove. The more you interact with a prospect, like and comments, all that kind of stuff, the more they're likely to see your content. So if we're connected, or you're my prospect watching this tonight, if I come out and engage with you and prime you as a prospect, you're going to start to see my content. Maybe not every day, but you'll see it some days, and you'll start to learn more about me. And so now I've got this dual track where I've got, in my scenario and in other people's scenarios we put through our Accelerator and our boot camps, they're seeing thousands of people each week, seeing their content and engaging with them. And that's doing an education piece, it's breaking down barriers, whilst they're nurturing and building those relationships one-to-one and taking them into a conversation and a call. So you need to choose your approach in the nurturing one-to-one, the prospecting one-to-one. You need to choose your approach thoughtfully, and it needs to be unique to the person. You might have a framework, you might have a template, but you're certainly not using that template copy and paste. You're using it as a framework to understand how you can engage the prospect. So we wrote a process that can help structure this for you. And it is the 7 steps. And it works on LinkedIn, it works on all sorts of scenarios, but it's based on the fact that we have to prime and remove the friction from a cold business relationship. So literally there's actually 5 interactions in this process. There's a connection request as well with a relevant message, but actually you take people through interactions to get them to engage. Now, some people will engage immediately and become very responsive, and other people, it will take more effort to bring them to life. And some people are just not on LinkedIn. They've got an account, but they've not logged in for decades. Well, maybe not a decade, but you get my drift. So the 7 steps is taking people through a series of interactions to bring them to a level of responsibility to have primed them so that they're ready to receive your message. Does it mean we don't ask for a meeting? Does it mean we don't send them a message about trying to secure business from them? No, we can still do that. But what we're trying to do, a bit like the Elon Musk thing, is we're trying to reduce the cost or reduce the failure rate of the process. So if you think cold pitching is 0.4%, but let's be generous and say it's 1%, can we get this into 10%, 20%? A 20% success rate for a salesperson would be absolutely incredible, from outreach to sale. Now, of course, we can quickly generate a 20% success rate from outreach to meeting, but how many of those meetings will actually lead to a call? So it's really important you do your research on your prospects so that you don't just waste time churning on people that aren't right. So the 7 steps of social selling is about interacting with the prospect to build up that pattern of relationship, build up that visibility of you, trust and credibility of you alongside the content. And because these 2 systems are working together, they actually support each other and aid each other, because people now see the content more because you're engaging with them. Some people will go through this very responsive, and I would encourage you to focus on the people who are more active on LinkedIn. And Sales Navigator has some spotlight features that you can go on and filter to find the most active accounts. So that will help you eliminate trying to use the 7 steps on people who are not very active, but you would still work through that process. So you'd increase your connection acceptance rate, which languishes about 15% cold. It'll go over 50% if you run this process on the spotlight prospects or spotlight leads on Sales Navigator. You can build the relationships from the beginning. In any sales environment, when you get the first meeting with the prospect, you have to build a level of relationship and chit chat on the call. You can actually front load some of that with this process. Not all of it, but you can make it a bit more friendly when they're on the call. You've already broke the ice a little bit by using the 7 steps. It increases the responsivity and engagement of the prospects, and you don't need automation and you don't need cold pitches. So the 7 steps is a tried and tested method. It is a journey to implement this, because human beings, the reason automation doesn't work is because human beings are very hard to speak to en masse and stay relevant, because we're all different. We all think slightly differently. So the reason automation can't work well enough is the reason why we have to be more personal. The more personal you go, there are 2 tools that we have as human beings to leverage to get more engagement and more interest from people. Number 1 is curiosity, keeping people curious. And number 2 is relevance, highly personalized. Yeah, and highly personalized does not mean one of those gifs of yourself waving like that with a cup with their name on. Oh my God, how cheesy is that? It's personal. Make it personal. Show you've put the effort in to make it personal. And you don't need automation. So that's really what I wanted to share. There's a couple of things I'm going to add because I've seen a couple of questions. If you want to talk about this more, our team are happy to talk you through it. There's no cost to that. I would encourage you as well, if you want to understand our tracker, we have a tracker system for this. It's a template that you can use. I'll put the email on screen, hopefully there. If you want a copy of the tracker, just email us, hi@maverrik.co.uk, and we'll send you a copy of the tracker. So a couple of questions. So the first question is, how much time does this process take? Being completely honest with you, it will probably take you a couple of hours a day to begin with, because you'll be a bit clunky at it. It'll take a while to get familiar with it. And as you go, it gets quicker and quicker, to the point where you can probably devote, including the post writing, maybe 2 hours a day, writing the post and engaging with the prospects, 2 hours a day. What results can you get? Well, that really depends on how you view it. And when you look at our tracker, there's a list of prospects you can add to it going downwards. And one of the dangers of the tracker is that you actually think about this as a downward process. And so what happens is it becomes a numbers game. I've got 50 people on, I need to get through the actions. 50 people, I need to get through the actions. The real goal of the tracker is to work across the person, and then work across the person. So you might be working on 5 or 10 people at once, and your job is to move them across. But for some reason, what we do is we focus on, I'll go down and then back up and down, and you miss people, you lose people, and you forget people. So it's really important, if you want to copy the tracker, again free, that you think about this carefully. If you only need 4 customers, go all in on the effort on the 4 customers. The more effort you put in, the better the success rate's going to be. So if you're cold calling right now and it's taking you 5 hours to get 4 sales, what do you think would happen if you pre-qualified and researched and found 4 clients, prospects that you know could have a need for you, and you made the effort on them? Now, of course, we wouldn't do just 4 because we'd be nurturing a pipeline, but if you're spending 5 hours to get 4, surely in 5 hours on LinkedIn, you could actually nurture more people, because you've got 5 hours at 20 hours a week or whatever it is, 25 hours a week. That's a huge amount of time to be nurturing prospects. And the great thing about the content piece of priming is it actually nurtures people down the road. So 6 months down the line, if you're consistent, if you implement this and can stick to it, 6 months down the line, it's actually easier to make a sale from LinkedIn in 6 months because of the work you're doing for the first 6 months. And so my account, for an example, and I do this myself and our team does it, they have to do it for themselves. The first year is like, this is quite tough, but it's, you know, I'm making progress, I'm getting results, but it's tough. But they're making sales. The first 3 months feel a bit like a mountain, but you're starting to make progress. And then year 2, like all sales, the yield is just bang, 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 bang. And in our own sales team, who have to implement this process, they see that the first 90 days, 6 months are quite tough slog. And then the fruit really starts to yield. They've made sales, they've paid for themselves, they're earning the money. But actually that's when the real fruit starts to yield, because they've invested in the network, and they're not just yielding the low-hanging fruit, they're actually cultivating the fruit higher up the tree. And so they start to get inbound, they start to get more inquiries that way too. So that's really important. The other thing that somebody's asked is, what's the time scale for that 7-step process? What's the time scale? So the danger with any kind of process is it's stuck to as a template, in other words, rigid. So it does need to flex based on how your market is, the type of people you're going, are they left brain, right brained, all of those things. But generally speaking, that 7-step process should happen in about 2 weeks, in about 10 days. Sometimes it's a little bit longer, sometimes it's a little bit shorter, depends on the decision maker. What we know is the more analytically minded decision makers, sorry, I broke my slides then. The more analytically minded decision makers take longer. The more emotive or creative decision makers, so entrepreneurs and CEOs and marketing people, those kind of people, are a bit more speedy. But it also depends on the activity level of the prospects you're going after and the strategy. There's 3 messaging strategies really on LinkedIn. 3. There's the responsive, there's the relevant, and there's the high impact. It depends which strategy you use on the prospect, and you need to understand which one for which prospect, because if you use the relationship one on somebody who's not very active, you'll be sorely disappointed. So there's 2 elements. 2 weeks as a rough template. Some decision makers, see more bigger companies, may take a little bit longer. More analytically minded decision makers, CIOs, CFOs, those kind of people generally take a little bit longer. And obviously more responsive people, more active people are a bit quicker, and more creative bent roles generally are more responsive. So there's the flavor of how it works. And generally, just one other highlight, we did some research for government agency during lockdowns, and we actually discovered that the most active group on LinkedIn are CEOs, founders. They are, let me just get the maths right, 5 times more active than the average user. So if you're trying to reach a managing director, CEO, C-level title, they are more active generally than the average user, which is about 4% of LinkedIn is active, but it's about 25% or 24% of C-level people and business leaders are active. So that's a wrap really for tonight. If you want the resources, the tracker, or you want to just unpick this with somebody on a call, please do message us. We'll put the call link in there where you can book a time in the chat. If you've got value from this, please would you thumbs up it if you're watching on YouTube, follow our company page on LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever you're watching. Do come find me on LinkedIn, drop me a connection request. If you've got questions, please feel free to send them to me. But more importantly, go and unpack this, watch it again, get the replay, and think about all of the fundamentals I've said here, because the fundamentals of LinkedIn, the way to sell on LinkedIn is not to obsess about the platform. It's actually to understand your proposition and your process. And once you've found those, you can actually really leverage the platform to build a pipeline for the future and get the meetings and avoid this 0.4% success rate. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week. We've got another session next week, which I think is mastering digital sales. Do sign up on Eventbrite or LinkedIn for that on our company page. And remember all of the good stuff that helps us be seen by the algorithm. I really appreciate that. And see you next week for the next session on Maverick's Webcast.
Past year, Maverrik has helped generate more than 15 million in new business. The biggest reason for this is our 90-day training and implementation platform we call the Accelerator program, where we teach your team to sell on social media with an implement-as-you-go strategy. It's not a pre-recorded course, it's hands-on sales training that develops and grows with you, with 90 days of real action that generates business and long-term revenue. So who is it for? This program is for entrepreneurs, marketing and sales professionals who want to sell without ads, cold calling, or pushy tactics. A better way of selling with real steps to take which speeds up your sales process without burning any bridges. These are just a few examples of results our members have achieved using the Accelerator. As you can see, the Accelerator isn't about quick wins, it's about building a better sales process. If you'd like to learn more, just book a call with the Maverrik team and we'll show you how the Accelerator program can win you new business.